Just wanted to talk a little bit about the Bloomberg rankings for the most innovative country that were released this week. I think for a lot of folks, maybe the big number that's going to kind of be interesting is that the U.S. actually ranks number 9 on that. Bloomberg, like any ranking, uh, college rankings, for example, takes a bunch of index factors and puts them all together and comes up with kind of this, the number, as it were. Like any index, it's subject to some problems depending on how you weight the various indexes. The most innovative country in the world, according to Bloomberg this year, is Germany. And that's because they're tied with the United States for having the most patents. They get an extremely high amount of high tech, particularly in Berlin. There's a lot of high technology companies, but they have some big industrial companies there like BMW and Volkswagen, and those folks do a lot to drive high technology in the industry. There's also this thing in Germany called the Mittelstand, which is this sort of large collection of medium-sized firms throughout the economy who are generally family-owned, long-term family-owned, multiple generations, very, very excellent in a particular subfield of an industry. So like lens grinding for big telescopes or precision machines, this kind of stuff. Historically, Germany's been very strong at. They do a lot of innovation in that space, and that's driven by the Mittelstand as well as these sort of big companies. So Germany's the most innovative country in the world, according to Bloomberg. Number 2 is South Korea, and that's because they spend so much of their money in that economy goes into R&D, so something called the R&D intensity. So South Korea is ranked number 2 because they spend, along with some other countries, so much of the amount of money in their economy goes directly into research and development. You can see that with a lot of the innovative products that come out of there. Number 3 was Singapore, uh, largely just because it's a relatively well-run country. It's pretty rich. It's got a lot of technology going there too. There's not actually a lot in this area, with the exception of Singapore, focused on technology. But a lot of business schools are in Singapore. If they're going to establish an Asian hub, a lot of times they'll go to Singapore, like INSEAD. And those same time, those graduates who want to get into technology from Boston or California who are interested in being in technology, who don't go to Japan because it's not really immigrant friendly, go to Singapore because it's very Western feeling and very clean, very well orderly, or even though it's sort of a benevolent autocracy. Number 4 on the list was Switzerland. That's because it's got a high concentration of researchers. All of the high energy collider stuff and CERN is based in Switzerland, so they get a ton of scientists to go there. That leads to a lot of other spillover stuff. So when you've got a lot of scientists in a space, a lot of times they go off on other projects, they make friends, those friends start smaller businesses, so you get a lot of kind of spillover benefit, something called agglomeration economies, where people are very good at their jobs and they tend to get insights in lots of other fields. Going down, Switzerland spends a bunch on R&D again, so that drives them to the top. Finland, same story. They have a lot of researchers as well in Finland. It's a very science-oriented, very science-friendly country. Denmark had the most researchers in a small country. Again, it's a small country with not a lot of people in it like Finland. So it benefits if you've got a lot of scientists, which they do. U.S., rounding out kind of the top 9 is we're good at patents. We produce a ton of patents because there's a ton of industrial R&D that goes on in the country. There's a lot of scientific research that goes on at universities. Patents are useful pieces of technology that are approved. So there's a fair amount of that stuff that comes out. China on that list was number 15. Now they actually dropped the slot, and we dropped the slot from last year as well. So lots of changes going on, but I think in terms of the top of the list, you would kind of imagine it is. I think maybe the country that people don't tend to think about as being super innovative is Israel. They're number 6 on the list. A tremendous technology area in Israel. But you can see how these sort of technology areas break down along geographic lines. You got Singapore here. You look for another regional hub, you end up in Israel. You look for another regional hub kind of north here, you end up maybe in South Korea. Some of this is mostly industrial driven, whereas some of these other ones are more immigrant driven.